Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to everybody's favorite show, How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert. Man, this chair is just, I need to get a new chair. Yes, this is the weekly live stream where we talk about everything to do with getting hired. So how to answer job interview questions, how to prepare your resume, careers, networking, all that kind of stuff. Anything to do with that sort of thing. We discuss it here, and it is an interactive live stream. So if you're seeing my face, you should see a chat box somewhere nearby. Get in the chat. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you're reacting to. Let me know what you're struggling with or you're wondering about. I'm here to help you out and answer questions. And the name of the episode today is What Are Your Strengths and Weaknesses? Best answer. And we're going to be talking about that. And also the perfect resume. So that's quite a lot to cover in one live stream. Usually the way this stuff works is each of those questions is kind of enough to get us started for a regular episode. But today we're doing both, and we're going to be answering those in reverse order. So we're going to be talking about the perfect resume first. But before that, public service announcement. I want to thank all my YouTube channel members. You guys are awesome. Thanks for your support. All my Patreons, all my super thanks donors, and especially to you, all my participants. You guys are great. Let's get into this. I see there are 7 people here. Thank you for joining me today. It's been a hectic week for me. I don't know about you guys, but you know, coming back from the holidays is always a bit of a gear shift, a bit of an adjustment. And I'm finding this year I'm having a bit harder time adjusting to it than in the past. I don't know, maybe I'm getting old. Anyway, let's get into this. Okay, the perfect resume. So if you are creating your resume, if you're a first-time job seeker, or you're someone who already has your resume and you are trying to adapt it to the job market of 2025, because some things have changed in the last few years. You know, people always say that. People say that every year. You know, all things have changed and you need to get with the times and update everything. That's usually BS. But I got to admit, in the last couple of years, ever since AI started coming out, it is a bit of a gear shift. There are things that have changed in a significant way for job seekers. And before that, it was the rise of ATS systems, which sort of really started coming in full steam 5 years ago. Like, they were around before that, but 5 years ago, they really became ubiquitous. You know, you could just assume that any recruiter or any company you sent in your resume to or your application, they were putting you through applicant tracking software, and that would filter your application, at least in the initial round. So that came in about 5 years ago. And because of that, people have had to adapt to it to, for want of a better word, get around it. And now the latest shift has been AI. AI is being used more and more in recruitment and selection on both the candidate side and on the company side. So that's another shift that's coming in. And the situation now is basically that, I've had it on good authority that approximately 50% of job candidates are using AI when it comes to their job search campaigns. So creating resumes, helping them interview, all that kind of stuff. They're using it in a variety of ways. Probably the easiest way to get into using AI is to create your resume or update your resume. So we're at a point now where, you know, about 50% of people are using it, 50% of people aren't. And the ones who are using it really do have quite a bit of an edge when it comes to certainly applying for worker level jobs, and you are sending in applications in response to posted jobs. Okay, so that's what we're seeing now. John is here. Hello to John. John says, been out of interviewing for a while. Hope to see what is current here. Yeah, that's basically the overview of it. Basically adapting to ATS systems first and now to AI. So that's what we're going to get into. So let's launch into this. The perfect resume. Okay, let's see here. Now, for those of you who are just starting off, I'm going to start at the beginning. I'm just going to do a very, very quick sort of overview of the basics here, and then we're going to get into a little bit more advanced stuff. I'm just trying to open a browser window so that I can share my screen with you guys. How would I do this? I'm going to use Chrome, and I got a selection of 3 browsers to choose from here. So I'm going to use Chrome, which is my default browser, and we're going to go from there. Now, there are traditionally 3 types of resumes, okay? The chronological resume, the functional resume, and then the hybrid resume, which is like 50-50, halfway between both of those. And the vast majority of people use a chronological resume. That's where you write all your work experience, oh God. It's hard to concentrate on 2 things at once. Let me tell you, I'm trying to deal with my browser and I'm trying to talk to you guys at the same time, and I'm doing a terrible job of both. Here we go. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen and then you guys can see what the hell I'm doing here. Okay, so now you can do this in Google, you could do it at any search engine. I am intentionally going to Bing, don't laugh, because Bing is good for a couple of things. And one of them that it's good for, here we go, Bing Images, is the image search. At least in the last several years, it's been superior in a couple of ways, in my opinion, to Google. Now, I'm going to type in resume example. Okay, you can type in a lot of other things, okay, permutations of this. But I don't know if you saw what I did there. I don't know if there's any way to maximize this. I guess not. But that's a shame. Here we go. So what you can do is if you're just creating a resume and you want to get a sort of overview of like all the different styles and what's possible to do, this is a good sort of way of doing that. Let's see if I can adjust my positioning. There we go. So here are some examples. Now you can see that a lot of people do resumes that have very fancy layouts. You've got, like in this case, all kinds of, bar charts and graphical type things going on. Lots of different text boxes and more, fancier layouts. Some people have pictures, some people don't. The jury's out on whether you need a picture or not, or you should put one. It can count against you, but then it can count for you. So, depending who you talk to, they'll recommend that you do a picture or not. But I'm doing this to basically show you that there's not really one standard layout or style. Many people do many things. And in this day and age, when people have to go through applicant tracking software on the other end, generally the rule is simpler is better. Okay, so if you remember what resumes looked like 30 years ago, or you've seen what resumes looked like 30 years ago, everything was in Times New Roman. Everything was very, like in one sort of column down the middle of the page. That still works. That's fine. The style doesn't really matter too much. And sometimes a very busy style can take away from the ease of reading your resume if a human actually looks at it. Okay, so don't be afraid to have a sort of very Spartan, kind of bare resume in terms of the format and the style. That's fine. What we want to do is we want certain things to pop out on our resume. So you can glance at your resume and you can immediately think, I got the key points. Like, for example, I'm scrolling through these. Now, imagine you were a recruiter and you only had, say, 5 seconds to glance at a resume because you have 1,000 resumes on your desk, figuratively speaking, right? What pops out in this resume? Maybe experience, life philosophy, their name, and then you move on to the next one. Is that good enough? Like this one here, profile, internship, the name, work experience. Is that what should be popping out to you, do you think? I would say not. If it's important, it should be prominent, okay? That's the first point I want to convey. This is more of what I was talking about with a simpler resume format. You don't have it divided vertically into different columns, like some over here, some down here. It's all just one. It's divided horizontally and you have different sections. This is probably good for the vast majority of resumes out there, especially if you're going for posted jobs, okay? As opposed to something like this. Nothing wrong with this. It's just that this is a bit busier. And if this goes through an ATS system, there's a higher likelihood that it will have issues analyzing this because you've got different text boxes, all over the page, and that may create complications. Same with graphics. If you have a lot of graphics, they're great for like management type resumes and executive type resumes. Absolutely wonderful. But they work against you for pretty much every other situation. So the simpler, the better. Okay. Hopefully I have convinced you of that. And I've shown you a lot of different possibilities here. Something like this. Personally, I would recommend something more like this, a bit simpler, a bit more basic. There's some weirdness going on down here with like different columns and things, but just this general layout is usually good. Okay. Now that we've got that out of the way. So if you're looking for like ideas, the kind of things you could put on a resume, you can always do what I just did. You go to Bing or to Google, you go to images, like doing an image search, and you type in resume examples or sample resumes or resume template, something like that. And then you start going through the image results, okay? That can give you a lot of ideas very quickly. And you quickly learn that it's not that picky. You can do a lot of different things, okay? Now, let's move on to something that is relatively new. It's always been around, but in the last certainly 5 years, this has really come to the forefront, and that's keyword matching, okay? Now, the problem is that there's a lot of things out in the real world, as you guys know, that it doesn't have a standard term for it, okay? The classic example I always use is even in something like accounting, which is regulated, you would think that they'd have industry standard terms across the board. No, they kind of don't. Sometimes they talk about profit, sometimes they talk about net income, right? The two things essentially mean the same, but we keep changing the lingo. So, for example, if there was a job posting and said, we're looking for someone who knows how to make a profit, and you respond saying, you should hire me because I know how to make net income, the problem is that if a machine scans this application of yours and it's told that it has to try and separate out the candidates that say that they know how to make a profit, because that's the lingo that was used in the job description. If your thing doesn't mention the word profit, instead it uses the term net income, it thinks that you're a non-starter. It rejects you because it doesn't see that magic word profit, right? This is the problem. We need to use their own lingo to describe what we do, right? If you want to pass these types of filters, right? And today, if you're going for posted jobs, these filters are pretty much almost universally in place. So you need to use their lingo, okay? This is where the power of AI comes in, because you could do this manually. You could go through your resume and you could rewrite your resume manually, changing all your lingo to their lingo that they used in the job description. But that's pretty labor intensive, and that might be pretty hard to do if you're applying for more than one job a day, right? So this is where the power of AI comes in, okay? Now, keyword matching is very important. The problem that's arisen the last several years is that it is so easy to apply for jobs on the internet. People can apply for hundreds of jobs a day, literally, okay? If you have like one resume that you just send in to every job that you find, you can apply for hundreds and hundreds of jobs a day. And there are people that do this. And I think the idea that they think that like, well, couldn't hurt to try, right? And if you do that hundreds and hundreds of times every day, maybe you'll get a bite. Now, usually that doesn't work. Usually the problem is that each job that's posted online tends to get a lot of applicants. We're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applicants. The problem is that usually about 50% of those applicants, those applications, are completely unsuitable. Like, it's a total non-starter. Someone doesn't have the most basic requirements for the job that were stated in the job description, right? So recruiters on the other end are being inundated with all kinds of applications, and like, how do you filter 1,000 applications? If you have to do that every day, you know what I mean? That's what they're dealing with on the other end. This is why they love ATS software, because it filters out 80% of them, like, before it even gets to you, because it says, well, we scanned the applicant's resume for keywords, and none of the keywords we said we needed were in there. So why persist with this? Just eliminate it, right? So this is the importance of keyword matching. So what it means is that to stand the best chance, and stand a fighting chance sometimes, you have to rewrite your resume to suit their job description. So the things they said they're looking for, you should have them on your resume. They should be pretty prominent, so even if a human looks at it, they pop out, right? You can make the word big, you could highlight it, whatever. And also, if it goes through ATS, you're giving it the keywords it needs to get past that filter. So if it's looking for profit and it's looking for a couple other things, you have those words on your resume. They're pretty prominent, they're towards the top, and that's what it needs to sort of filter you through that initial screening so that you can get to the point where you're being examined by a human. A human is looking at your resume and deciding whether they're going to bring you in for an interview. Okay, so keyword matching is very important. I can't stress that enough. In the old days before the internet really took off, it wasn't quite as important. If you said, I have net income, instead of profit, it would be looked at by a person. Usually the person had some basic accounting knowledge, so they'd understand that term means the same thing. But not in this day and age. You need to use their lingo, and you need to have all those words in your resume for it to get past the filters. Okay, next thing is, this is where we get to a little bit more sophistication. Okay, you've got a resume and it has the keywords in it that the lingo in it that they've been using in the job posting, and the things they said under requirements. We need someone who has this. You're using those terms and you're making those prominent in your resume or your application, and that's probably going to get you through the filter. Now, what can you do beyond that? This is where we get into things like accomplishments. I don't know if I can do a screen share for accomplishments. Probably not. No, I haven't gone ahead and tried a bunch of stuff, so I'm not going to try it live. What you can do on a resume is, usually if you're describing your work history, you're going to have, obviously, the positions you've held, maybe the dates you've held them, right? What your job title is. And then the default thing that people put in there are your duties. What you did, right? I answered phones. I did projects on this. I took care of work orders. I locked up the store at the end of the day, whatever, right? Those are duties. Great. Okay. What's really good to have on a resume is more than just that. You would have accomplishments. Now, accomplishments are a little bit different. They're things that are quantifiable, which means numbers. And traditionally, the two ways you would quantify an accomplishment is either in terms of percentage or currency, right? So, for example, an accomplishment could be something like, I led a project that saved the company $340,000 over the course of a fiscal year. Something like that. So you got the money in there, and you said, I did this. This is what I did. And it had this impact. It saved $340,000 in a fiscal year. Another thing you can put is percentage. You could say, I implemented some efficiency improvements to our local operation, which resulted in a performance gain of 17%. We processed 17% more work orders in a day, something like that, right? So you're saying, I did this, and this is the impact it had. It resulted in a 17% increase in the number of work orders we produce every day. Something like that, okay? So you have an accomplishment, this is what I did, and you have its impact. Now, the whole point of this is illustrating if you've done this for one company or one organization, if someone hires you, this is the type of thing that you could do for them, right? This is part of your value. So it's also great to pull from this when they ask you in a job interview, why should we hire you? What are your strengths? Things like this. You say, well, I know how to implement improvements to operations like these, where I can get you a 17% efficiency gain. Just within a couple of weeks, I could have you processing 20% more work orders, something like that. I've done it before. I can do it again. Things like this. So those are good to have on your resume. Now, some people debate, should you have duties or accomplishments? I say you should have 50-50. Have a few duties and then have a couple of accomplishments for every position that you list on there, generally speaking. That can vary, but that's kind of the general rule. They're conversation pieces in interviews. They show your value, and there's something that's unique to you as opposed to other people that might have been in the same job and they have the same experience, but they won't have the accomplishments you have. So that gives you a bit of a unique edge. And let's face it, you're competing with other people for this job. There's other candidates. So this is where the stuff matters. Okay. Now, how do you go about doing this? The last part of this I want to talk about is AI tools. Now, I'm just going to see if I can pull up like ChatGPT or something, just so I can demonstrate what the hell I'm talking about here, instead of just talking with no end in sight. Let's see. Sorry about this. I really should have done this preparation ahead of time. But here we go. I'll do it with two windows here. Okay, so for those of you who haven't used ChatGPT ever, okay, this is what it looks like, right? Okay, now it looks like a search box, just like Google, right? And you can use it just like you would use Google. You could type in, like, tell me about this, right? So it can do that. But in addition, it's like a fancy version of autocomplete. So one extremely powerful thing that ChatGPT has, and some of these other AI tools have, is that you can include in this prompt, like you would think in this box, you could only type, like, I don't know, 20 words or something. No, you can type thousands of words into this box. In fact, you can actually copy and paste the entire text of your resume into this box. So what you could say is, you could say, something like, please rewrite. I mean, it's silly because I'm not going to put in my resume here. But you know what? If I had planned this out further, we could take one of those resumes that I found on the search results, copy the text, and paste it in here. And you could say, please rewrite my resume. Here is the text enclosed, and put it in quotes. Let's just see what we can do here. Please write me a sample resume for a project manager in, I've never done this before, in construction. It's hard to type when you got this massive microphone right in the center of your keyboard here. Let's see what it says here. Here you go. You see how easy this is? Now, obviously, this is all crap data, right? Like, none of this is me. I've just said, write me a sample thing, right? But you see how it can just spit this kind of thing out? Now, what you can do then is, I've got this search box here down at the bottom of the page, right? What I can do now is I can copy the entire text of a job posting, okay? So I go online, I find a job posting that I want to apply for, and I copy the entire text of the job posting, Okay, I highlight it and say copy. And then I go over to ChatGPT and then I say, please rewrite my resume so that it is tailored to this specific job, and that you include the entire text string of the job posting in quotes usually, okay? And then within the same command, you're still in the same box before you hit enter. You say, please match keywords. Please make sure that the requirements that they are looking for are prominently featured in my resume, something like that. And then you say enter. And what it's going to do is it's going to spit out another version of this, okay, that will be more tailored to that job. The keywords are going to line up. It's using their lingo, right? And you can add these little wants, wills, and needs to your command to customize it, right? So hopefully you're with me so far. I'm sorry I can't demonstrate the entire process in front of you, but we're going to take this one step further, okay? And the final thing we're going to do is we're going to not just add the text of the job posting, we're going to add the entire text of our resume. So you're giving it two things. You're giving it your entire resume, and then you're giving it the entire job posting you're applying for. And then you're saying, please rewrite my resume so that it matches, it's a perfect match for this job, using all the right keywords, having them prominently featured, using all their lingo in describing things, and remove anything from my resume that they don't mention at all in the job posting, something like that. So there's no dilution of what you have. And then it spits out this business again, right? And then what you do is you grab this, okay, like the basic way to do it is you just grab the whole thing, paste it into a Word document, there you go. And there is a custom-built resume that's a version of your resume that's perfectly tailored to the job you're applying for. It's got all the keywords in. It's got all the things that they said they were looking for featured prominently in the resume. They're all up top. They're all talked about in more detail, right? And you're removing anything that you have that they've shown absolutely no interest in. They don't consider it important. So you don't fill up your resume with all this stuff that they don't consider important. You get straight to the point and you look like a perfect match. Okay. That's the kind of thing that you can do with some of these AI tools. Now, ChatGPT is kind of like everybody's entry into AI, right? There are other tools out there. The name escapes me at the moment. You know what? I'm going to ask ChatGPT right here, just to show you how useful this thing is. Watch, this is when it gives me a false answer or something. But I'm going to have to move my microphone just for a second here. Okay. Okay. What are some useful AI tools to help me write my resume? You love my writing? Okay, because there's one resume. It wasn't these. There was another one I was thinking of. Job Scan, I believe that was it. That's the one that I've heard of. That's the one I know other people are using. So this is like a version. It's almost like a proprietary version of ChatGPT where it just does resumes and resumes only. So you go to a website and it'll custom build your resume using AI, similar to what I showed you, but it's just specifically tailored to AI. So check that out. That might be of some use to you. I don't have a lot of experience using it myself, but I'm aware of it. So anyway, hopefully this gives you an idea of what you can do now to write a resume that will be relevant now to get past some of the ATS software that you might be contending with when you go for a posted job. Ba-dum-bum. And that's what I have to say about that. Bam Bam says, sir, can you please name the most common signs that employer immediately take notes on? What? What does that mean? Signs that employer immediately take notes on. You'll have to explain further. I don't understand what you're referring to there, Bam Bam. Bishnu Rout has joined as a member. Thank you, Bishnu. Thank you for the support. That's great. Membership has its privileges. I've done a few more advanced videos about HR and business and stuff that are members only, so you guys have access to that. I've also done some behind the scenes stuff for what that's worth. Okay, excellent. I'm going to close my windows here. Okay, I see there are 22 people here. Thank you for joining me today. Hopefully you found that semi-useful, somewhat interesting. Okay, we are going to move on to the main topic of today's episode, which is how to answer the job interview question, what are your strengths and weaknesses? I'm going to give you the best answer for that. Now, this question is essentially two questions in one. It's the question, what are your strengths? And it's the question, what are your weaknesses? Or what's your greatest weakness? So it's like two questions in one. So it's going to take me a while to go through this. We're going to do this where we answer the strength question first, and then we're going to talk about how we answer the weakness question. So if you get asked, what are your strengths and weaknesses in a job interview or in any other context, or if you just get asked, what are your strengths? Or you get asked some version of that question. Like, for example, why should I hire you? That's another version of what are your strengths? Like why should I hire you? Presumably I hire you for your strengths. What are your strengths? What can you bring? Right? Sometimes the question, why do you want to work here? Is another version of that, depending on how they mean it. Okay? So let's go. Okay. So you get this question, what are your strengths? And you think, okay, I need to say something good about myself, right? Doesn't take a rocket surgeon to come up with that. So you say things that you think are really good about yourself. You say, oh yeah, I'm like a really, really fast worker and I work really fast and I never complain, right? And you think, oh, I'm saying great stuff about myself. Meanwhile, the recruiter hearing this is thinking, no, that's not what I wanted to hear. You're fast. Okay, I'm interpreting that as the type of person that doesn't do a great job. And here, in this job, we need people that care about quality. Quality is number one. We don't really care how much time it takes. It has to be done right. So the fact that you're a super fast worker, that's not quite what we're looking for. Oh, and you never complain. Okay, well, that might not be good because we care about doing things right. And in order to do things right, you need to bring up things that are not working well, flaws in the system, flaws in the equipment, flaws in the process. We want people that when they spot this, they won't sweep it under the carpet. They'll bring it to our attention. So when I hear you say, I never complain, that's kind of not what we're looking for. We're looking for someone who will speak up and bring a flaw or something that's not working very well to our attention so we can fix it. So I'm sorry. I don't think you're really going to work out for this job. You see what happened there? You gave something that you thought was good, but it wasn't what the recruiter thought was good. Weird, huh? That's why this question is a challenge, because it's very easy to say something about yourself that you think is great. How do you know what the recruiter will think is great? You don't know the recruiter. You don't know how they think. You don't know what they're looking for beyond the job description. Okay? So this is the challenge of this question. Let's get into it. Okay. We talked about like strengths are relative. You might think it's a strength, but other people don't see it that way, and vice versa, right? Here's how you do this, okay? What do we know about the recruiter? What do we know about what they're looking for? Well, some of the things that they're looking for, they've told us in the job description. Usually in a section called requirements, they've said, we're looking for someone who has this education, we're looking for someone who has these skills, and we're looking for someone who has these experiences. You have 5 years experience in this, or you have experience operating a forklift or, whatever it is, right? They've already said that. So we know that they care about those particular things and that they would regard those as a strength if you have them, right? So when you get asked this question, what are your strengths? A good way to answer is you respond by going down the posted job requirements, because you know that they care about those things and they regard them as good. So when they say, tell me about your strengths, or what are your strengths, and you open your mouth and you start talking, all the stuff that you say is like resonating with them. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's good. No, that's good too. Yeah, we're looking for that. Oh, we're looking for that too, right? So that's how you answer this question, okay? You speak to the requirements. Now, there's a lot of sort of caveats to this I have to go into because they're based on questions I get. Like, for example, what if they said they're looking for something and it's a requirement, but I don't quite have that? Say they want 5 years experience in this thing, and I have 1 year experience in that thing, but not 5. Do I mention that? Do I not mention that? Like, how does that work? And this is what I'll say. If they've said in the job description that they need 5 years experience in this, and you only have 1 year, and you've stated that quite clearly on your application, right? So they see your resume, they see that you've only got 1 year experience in that, but they invite you to an interview anyway, that means that that thing is not really a requirement. It's a nice to have. It's not a deal breaker if you don't have 5 years experience, because they don't bring people down to interviews that on paper are just not qualified. What would be the point of that? It would be a waste of their time. It would be a waste of your time. Like, if you're just not qualified for it, hands down, what would be the point in talking to you, right? So the only people that they'll bring for an interview are people who are qualified on paper. On paper, it looks like you have all the skills you would need to do this job. Okay? So always remember that, okay? And they can say in a job description that this is a requirement when really it's not. Really, they're kind of flexible about that, right? Some things are requirements and some things are nice to haves. So if you ever go to a job interview and, you're worried that you're not qualified, don't be, because they've invited you down for an interview anyway after seeing your resume and your application, so you are qualified. You just don't know what they consider qualified. They're not sharing with you what's really required and what's kind of a nice to have, right? So let's say you only have 1 year. Here's what I would do, okay? If you're going to start answering this question, I would obviously start with the things that you have outright, so there's no issue. But when it comes to this requirement, there's no harm in saying, I have 1 year experience in this. And the only thing that they want to know is that that is not going to be an issue for you. So if you only have 1 year, that's fine. What they're looking for is maybe 5 years isn't really their real requirement, but they just want to make sure that that thing is not going to be an issue. So if you say something like, I only have 1 year experience in this, but in that 1 year, I've had to handle almost every type of situation you can ever imagine when it comes to doing that job or doing that thing. So I feel pretty comfortable I can handle almost any situation that would arise, something like that. And they go, okay, that's fair. Or you say something like, I've only been doing it for 1 year, but during that 1 year, I worked with people who were doing it for 20 years. They've been doing it for 20 years. And it wasn't like they were the senior and I was the junior. We handled all cases together on a rotating basis, and I held my own. So I'm not really too concerned about, being thrown anything that I won't know how to handle. I feel like I've seen it all, and I've worked with people that are very experienced in this, and I've picked up a lot of tips from them. So they hear this and they go, oh, okay, so that's not going to be an issue for you. You can do that fine. That's the takeaway. Okay? So that's what I would say. Now, if it's something that you don't have at all, you can say that, but if there's some way you can put their mind at ease and say like, well, I haven't done that, but I have done this, which is very similar. And I did that for quite a while, and I did a really good job, and I know the ins and outs of it. And so I don't really feel that this aspect of the responsibilities is going to be that much of a challenge for me. Something like that. All you have to do is put their mind at ease regarding the requirements if you don't have them outright. And they've demonstrated that that's certainly possible by the fact they've invited you down there anyway. So just remember that. Okay, I could go on, but hopefully that makes sense for how to answer the strength part of this question. Okay. Let's move on to the weakness part, because the question is, what are your strengths and weaknesses? So I've given you how to answer the strength part. Let's talk about the weakness part. Now, if you go to a job interview and they ask you, what are your weaknesses? I'm not even pointing at the right camera. What are your weaknesses? This can be a very tricky question. It's the king of trick questions in a job interview. See, recruiters are taught that, rightly so, that you have a sort of facade. You're trying to make a pitch for yourself. You're trying to sell yourself. And you're going to make yourself out to be this like amazing, flawless person that's the best employee who ever walked the earth, right? And one of the things a recruiter is tasked to do is to try and peel away the layers and find the real you. Okay, they don't buy this idea that you're the greatest person who ever lived. They're thinking like, you must have flaws like everyone else, and I want to know what your flaws are. So we're going to test some of the things about you to see, how good you really are, right? Now, the easiest and laziest way of doing this is to just simply ask the candidate, so what are your weaknesses, right? What are those flaws that you're trying to hide so desperately from me? Now, if you, as a candidate, play into this, you'd say, oh, well, let me tell you, first of all, I'm a raging alcoholic. I think you need to know that. Secondly, I hate people, okay? I hate them, right? So, it's very important you need to know this, because you will have to tiptoe around me once I'm in the workplace, because I have a very violent temper. And once, you look at me the wrong way or something, you better watch out, because I get violent and I can make myself a real nuisance, but that's just me, that's just who I am. And I refuse to apologize for it. That's not something you want to say, obviously, right? But the problem is that they ask you this direct, pointed question, and a lot of people feel like they need to answer. They need to give full and complete information. And so you've just eliminated yourself. You've gone sort of off script and you've told them about bad things about you. And then that's a fatal flaw, because you are giving a first impression. They don't know you. What would you think if you met someone for the first time and the first words out of their mouth was, I have a rotten temper, I have addictions, I have personality issues, I have issues with working with people, issues with communicating with people, and I'm in a terrible mood all the time. Like, what would you think of that person? Would you think, okay, right on, let's bake some brownies together, right? No, you would think like, okay, you're probably not the person we would want to go with, right? You get a bad first impression. Well, that's the situation. In a job interview, you're making a first impression. And if you say a whole bunch of negative things about yourself, you lose, okay? And instead, they hire another candidate who didn't say anything negative about themselves in a job interview. So as far as the recruiter knows, they don't have any negative things about them. So that's the problem with this question. That's why this question is a trap. Okay, so how do you answer the question without giving away all kinds of bad things that make a bad impression? Well, here's the deal. Okay, I just got to figure out what order I'm going to say this stuff in. Okay, let's get a few obvious things out of the way first. You can't do a few cliched things, because you might not do job interviews all the time, but recruiters do them every day. This is their 9 to 5. Okay, so don't say I have no weaknesses. Okay, they've heard that and they know it's a lie. Everyone's got weaknesses and you're lying to them, and they know that you're lying right to their face. That's not good. Don't say, what are your weaknesses? Oh, chocolate, kryptonite, chocolate flavored kryptonite. That's my weakness. They've heard it. They've heard it before. They do this for a living. Okay? Don't think that you're being so original and hilarious. It's like, wah, ha, ha, ha. Yeah, I've heard that one. Okay, so that kind of backfires, and they don't like people that just avoid the question or obfuscate it. They asked you it for a reason. They want an answer, okay? A real answer. Don't dress up a strength as a weakness. Don't say, well, my biggest weakness is that I just work way too hard. My biggest weakness is that I'm just way too nice to everybody around me that needs my help. It's like that is an obvious deflection. They don't buy that, okay? They ask the question to get an answer, not, a sort of kiss off. So those don't work, okay? You can't say those things. So how do we answer this? We have to give them something, but it can't be something that makes them think we're bad, like we give a bad first impression, okay? Here's what I recommend, okay? Think of something you do that you're proud of, like you work fast, or you're very meticulous, or you're very organized, or you're very warm and friendly to everyone around you. Like whatever it is, think of something, a trait you have that you're proud of, okay? Now, think of a side effect of that trait, okay? So you're warm and you're friendly to everyone around you, and you take time to have conversations and ask people how they're doing and all. What could be the side effect of that? Well, maybe it takes you a while to get down to work, right? Other people, they come and they don't say anything to anyone. They get down to they go right to their desk and they start working. You're the social butterfly. You're hanging out near the water cooler. You're talking to everyone in the office. It's 45 minutes before you get to your desk, right? Everyone loves you, but my God, get on with some work, So think of a thing that's great that you do, and think of the negative side effect of it, the trade-off, okay? Give them a trade-off. Give them an understandable side effect of something that's awesome, okay? And the way I recommend you do it is with this formula, okay? So basically good, bad, good, okay? So here's what you say. You start off with a good thing you do. Well, I'm an incredibly warm person that goes out of their way to build really strong, positive relationships with all my coworkers, with my boss, with any subordinates I have, and anyone around me. Okay, I'm a pleasure to work with. Unfortunately, that sometimes has the effect of this. It maybe takes me a little while to get down to work. Okay, so that's the weakness that you're talking about, right? What did I say? Good, bad, good. Now you have to give them a good thing. Now tell them how you fix it so it's not a problem. So, I don't know, you would say something like, well, but what I found is that if I stay a little bit late every day, say 10 minutes, I can easily match everyone else's workload in the office. So the fact that I'm building relationships, I'm talking to people, that never impacts the quantity or quality of my work. Something like that. I'm making this up off the top of my head. But good, bad, good. I do this thing that's great, but sometimes it can lead to this, okay? Negative side effect. But then I do this that completely fixes the problem, right? So at the end of this, the recruiter is not left with anything that you do that's really bad. You did give something bad, but they can't count it against you because you neutralize the effect of it. It's not a bullshit thing that isn't bad. It is bad, but you've given a fix. Now, over the course of giving this answer, you've told them two amazing things that you do. I build great relationships with everyone around me. I'm a pleasure to work with. Everyone loves having me as a resource. And I stay a little bit late every day and I make sure that, all my work is done and I'm not, missing anything. So I'm as productive as every other employee or whatever. I've just said two amazing things about myself in the question where they were trying to trap you. So this is what I recommend. Okay, I could easily go on and give you other examples and stuff, but this is that. So when you get the question, what are your strengths and weaknesses? It's really these two questions. There's the strength part, there's the weakness part, and then you answer them back to back. Hopefully that makes sense. That's what I have to say about this. Okay, I see there's 30 people here. Thank you for joining me. This is an interactive live stream, so get in the live chat. I have no more agenda, no more things to talk about. I'm simply responding to questions or comments or reactions. Let me know what you're struggling with, what you're wondering about, and I will help you out if I can. Bam Bam, who said something about what? An hour ago, now explains it, and I get to it now after an hour, says, Bam Bam says, I meant, what does an employer instantly pay attention to at the first impression and in the first minutes of a conversation? Okay, well, put it this way. If you're talking about when they first see your resume, what do they pay attention to? They look for the things that pop out that they said they're looking for. So if they said we're looking for someone with 5 years experience driving a truck and someone who's got this license, that was like the two biggest things in the requirements in the job posting. That's kind of what they're looking for on your resume. Okay? That's a big deal. If you're talking about meeting someone in person, okay, it's probably going to be your appearance and how you sound and your manners. That's going to be the immediate stuff that's in front of them. So if you're dressed inappropriately, like let's say you want to work at a bank and you showed up in sweatpants, or let's say you wanted to get a job driving a truck and you showed up in a tuxedo, right? That's going to be the first thing that they notice. Then it's going to be when you open your mouth, what you say. The first thing you say is really going to frame you. So if you say something inappropriate, or you don't really follow etiquette, right? You don't shake their hand. You don't say it's nice to meet you. I mean, hey, it might not be nice to meet them. I totally get it, but you have to say it, right? You know what I'm saying? That's the stuff that makes the first impression in the very beginning. Okay. Now, if it was a video conference, like you're doing it on the computer, there's an interview on the computer, right? They might see kind of like a headshot, kind of like you're seeing of me, like a head and shoulders, right? I mean, you never know. The person might not be wearing any pants or whatever. I assure you, I'm wearing pants and they're very nice. But, it's just sort of this. So you're grooming and like, if you're a dude, your facial hair, your hair, your attire, what you choose to wear, it should be professional. It should be sort of basic professional if you don't know what to wear. For most jobs, unless it's like a real blue collar thing, don't do interviews in like t-shirts, that kind of thing. When you go to a job interview, by the way, don't wear jeans. It took me many years to realize this. Don't wear jeans because jeans are casual. Even like you would think like jeans would be totally appropriate for a lot of jobs, but technically they're not. Now, depends if the recruiter or the other person picks up on that. I don't know, but don't wear jeans. Just play it safe. Okay, so those are the things that make a first impression, but the entire interview is going to be a first impression for them as they get to know you. You see, usually the way it goes is that, most people, they come in, they look okay, they look like a contender, they're polite, they shake hands or they say hello, they say nice to meet you, you make a little bit of small talk, and then you get into the interview. And throughout the course of the interview, usually an interviewer can unearth some kind of thing that the candidate says that just doesn't make a great impression. Either they say something negative about themselves, or they say something negative about someone else, like a previous boss. Rule number 1, don't say anything negative about anyone in a job interview. Even when they ask you, what was the worst thing you hated about your last boss? Like they'll ask you questions like this to bait you. And if you fall into the trap by saying like, my last boss, they were a jerk. They had the stupidest hairdo. They were fat and they were mean. It's like, sorry, you lost the interview because you're bad-mouthing somebody. And if you're going to badmouth a previous boss, if these people hire you, you'll badmouth them to others, right? So you failed. So your answer to that would be like, what's the thing I hated about my previous boss? Well, I actually didn't hate anything about them. I mean, we got along okay. Like everyone, they have strengths and weaknesses, but there was really nothing that was an issue for me. I can swing with it. And that's how you answer the question. You don't get baited into saying bad things, right? So people will either eliminate themselves by saying something negative, or they'll just say something weird. They'll just be like it's not necessarily bad. It's just strange, and that can, if people don't know how to respond or it creates awkwardness, that's usually a problem, because you should be able to have a very pleasant interaction with people. It's not weird. It's not awkward. You don't say anything negative or anything strange. It feels good for the interviewer. And as stupid as this sounds, that's probably the biggest thing that you need to ensure. That when the interviewer ends the interview and they go away, they think, wow, that person was fun to talk to. I enjoyed speaking with them. I would like to do it some more. That's what you want. You want to leave them with that impression. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of along those lines. Sergio says, "You are truly awesome." Well, thank you. I'm trying to hit 300 pounds. If I get to 300 pounds, then I'll be awesome. I just want you to know that. That's how you measure these things. Don't be fooled. Don't believe anyone who says that that's not true. But thank you very much, Sergio. Karishma says, "What do you suggest to win the interviewer's confidence for cases where someone is applying for a role other than their main experience? Let's say from supply chain management consulting to product management." Okay, let me read that again. What do you suggest to win the interviewer's confidence? Oh, 4 cases. Okay, don't write like that. Write FOR. Okay, don't write the number 4. I know it's like texting, you go with the 2 fingers and, yeah, I get it. But I consider this to be like professional conversation, even though it totally isn't. I still, maybe it's my ego. It also helps me understand. For cases where someone is applying for a role other than their main experience. Oh, you could do that totally. I mean, it's almost like a soft form of changing careers, right? In a way, right? People put too much emphasis on changing careers like it's this huge thing. You have a lot of skills. A lot of jobs use basically the same skills. It's really not as big of a deal as a lot of people in HR think it is, right? There could be some transferable skills, but let's say no direct experience or certificate. Oh, text word limit. Oh, really? Okay. Okay, makes sense. Let's see. What do you suggest to win their confidence or someone is applying for a role? Okay, listen. I'll give you my honest opinion on this. Okay, this is my honest opinion. Hopefully everybody knows the difference between recruiters and hiring managers, right? Hiring managers, if you get a job, the hiring manager is your boss, right? They are the boss of the person who gets hired. That's who a hiring manager is. They don't work in the HR department. Okay? So if you get a job, if you're interviewing for a job of driving a truck, the sort of person who's the boss of all the truck drivers, the dispatcher or the shop manager, they're the hiring manager, right? Because the new employee will report to them. They don't know anything about labor laws and, this kind of stuff. They know about driving trucks, okay? So the hiring manager is quite a bit different from the recruiter. The recruiter works in the HR department. They don't know anything about driving trucks, but they know about labor laws, and their job is basically to filter out the people that are clearly not qualified and act almost like a secretary where they coordinate the job interviews and call everyone, make sure the candidate comes in at the right time, and make sure the hiring manager comes to the interview at the right time, and a lot of scud work, a lot of grunt work. Okay, that's what the recruiter does. They don't know anything about the job itself, only what they're told by the hiring manager. Okay. Now, this is a problem because if you are talking to a recruiter and it's for something where you are changing careers, traditionally, you couldn't really change careers by talking to a recruiter if they're doing it by the book. Because what's the thing that recruiters always care about? It's how many years of experience do you have? That's their like metric for how much you know what you're doing, right? So if you've worked in the bank and you say, I've worked there for 1 year, and then there's another candidate that says, I work at the bank and I've worked there for 10 years. The recruiter will conclude that the person who's worked there for 10 years will do their job way better than the person who's worked there for 1 year, right? Now, we all know that that's not necessarily true, but that's how recruiters manage this situation, because they're called in to fill all kinds of jobs. Like they could be filling an accounting job one day and a truck driver job the next day. So, I mean, it's kind of an impossible order for them to have to learn each job, right? They can't. So the problem is, if you're trying to change careers, or you're doing a soft thing for changing your careers, traditionally, you couldn't really do that by talking to a recruiter, because the recruiter's first question is going to be, how much experience do you have at this thing that we need in the new job? And if you say, well, it wasn't really my main line, it was something I only did occasionally, and, right? If that's what they learn about you, they're going to conclude, oh, well, then you don't really know how to do that very well, right? Now, the traditional way to get around that was through networking, where you talk to the hiring manager and you say, hey, I'd love to do this. I've got some great skills. You talk to the hiring manager, you talk shop, you have a good conversation about driving trucks, and the hiring manager sees, okay, you know what you're talking about. You understand about driving trucks, because we can have a conversation about some advanced thing about driving trucks, and you know it all. You hold your own, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you're asking some very intelligent questions. You're saying some things. I know you could do it just by hearing you talk. So they go, okay, I'll give you a chance, right? That's how you get around that. So it's very hard to say, if you're talking to a recruiter, what will they be impressed by? You know what I mean? The problem is, technically, they won't be impressed by anything other than years of experience in the exact thing you're going to be doing. That's how they're trained. And I've trained recruiters in university, in business school. I've taught these HR classes on recruitment and selection. And that's like how the theory goes, right? So, the only thing that would sway that would be, if it's some kind of networking connection. Either they've spoken to you and they know that they get a vibe that you would know how to do that job, or you've got like a good report from your boss to them saying, like, this person could do that, right? I mean, it's silly, because you're talking to a person that knows nothing about trucks. How do you convince them that you can drive a truck, without actually demonstrating it? You know what I mean? It's almost an impossible task. So the traditional way was networking. The only thing you can do in a job interview is you can say, like, look, all the skills that are needed for this, I've done them all. And I can tell you, I'm prepared to tell you in great detail how each of these constituent skills I've done in my existing career, right? So they could say, have you done this? And you could say, well, pretty much, yeah. The answer is always yes, and here's the context in which I did that. Now, maybe the reality is it was just a very minor thing that you did like a couple of times, but don't let on to that, right? If you want to have a chance of them picking you. Okay, does that make sense? That's kind of the reality. I mean, that's just been my experience. I mean, I've worked across 5 industries, so I've changed careers a few times. But it's always been done through networking, because you can't get anywhere through a recruiter because they're doing it by the book. And you always have 0 years experience in the thing you're going to if you're changing careers, even like the soft changing careers. So the only way to get in there is basically your reputation as a good employee. Now, if you have, I've never tried this, but here's a theory. If you've done a performance review with your boss, and let's say you passed with flying colors 1 year, let's say, you did like, oh yeah, you were in the top 10 percentile or something of all the employees in your group. You were like in the top. and your boss gave you a rave review. They wrote down like, wow, you're really good at this. You're one of my most valued employees. Put that on your resume or bring it to illustrate make a case for yourself in the interview. You're basically saying like, I can handle anything you throw at me. I'm a highly capable person. And so maybe that succeeds in convincing them like, okay, maybe we can give them this. It's somewhat related to what they've been doing and they're a highly capable person. Maybe that will make a good case. But hopefully that makes sense. David says, I have the first call with a recruiter soon in about half an hour. Okay, well, I probably took up 15 minutes of that talking. As I checked his LinkedIn, he is not technical, so I'm wondering what direction the questions are going. I have the first call with a recruiter soon in about half an hour as I checked his LinkedIn. Okay. Well, listen, all interviews are basically non-technical. They really aren't. The technical part was when you sent in your application, like what's on your resume, what skills do you have, what experience you have, what education you have. That was kind of the technical component. The interviews are mainly to see what you're like as a person, because you could be the most technically accomplished person on the planet. They would still not hire you if you're a jerk and they can't talk to you because you piss them off every time that they talk to you, right? No one's going to want to work with you. I don't care how talented you are. No one's going to want to work with you. The purpose of the interview is to see what you're like as a person. So this is why they put non-technical people to interview you for a technical job. You see what they're doing, right? It's because the interviews are fundamentally non-technical, right? And we already said as much a moment ago about like how the recruiter doesn't know anything about truck driving any more than they know about accounting, but yet they have to recruit for both those positions, right? So they're going to make their determination based on non-technical criteria. Are you easy to talk to? Are you professional? Do you show up on time? When you show up for the interview, is your grooming and your attire appropriate? When they ask you about what's your weakness, do you reveal all kinds of like major personality issues or issues with, you have problems dealing with other people or whatever, that could be real red flags. You know what I mean? Are you likely to quit because, of some preference or personality? This is what they're looking for, okay? So that's usually what questions are tailored to, okay? You're probably not going to be engaging in highly technical discussions whether or not the interviewer is technical, okay, for like a first interview. Okay, so just go in there and your one job is to make that person feel that you're awesome. Nothing is going to be a problem. Whatever they throw at you, you can handle it. You're friendly. You're easy to deal with. You're a pleasure to deal with. And if ever they put you in a tight spot and they ask you like a pointed stress question and they say, well, your credentials aren't very good, are they? Or something, never get upset. Always respond with a smile or laugh it off and go, oh, ha, ha. Yeah, I can see how people think that sometimes. It's perfectly understandable. Maybe this stuff isn't as prominent as it should be. So I get that. But blah blah blah. I'm really very good. That kind of thing, right? So be super pleasant. And in a nutshell, that's what will get you to pass the interview. Stupid, but it's true. That's what people look for. Okay, there are 38 people. Thank you for joining me today. If anyone has any questions they'd like me to respond to, get in the chat now. Otherwise, I have no choice but to wind this up because I don't have anything else to say. Okay, Lion is here. Lion says, I'm applying for jobs that are below the position I used to work in. When I apply, I don't get the job because managers have the same position that I have in my resume. How can I overcome this? Well, okay, besides the obvious line, which would be go for positions that are more appropriate for where you are, I understand that you're maybe like trying to apply for things lower down so that it seems like more of a clear, a clear case of you being qualified for it. unfortunately, this is where the whole like overqualified thing comes into play, right? The problem is that if you appear like you can do much more than the role that you're applying for, they're going to make the assumption that you will not be happy in this job, you will not stay in this job, you will leave very quickly as soon as something better comes along, and they're going to also assume that something better will come along for you very soon. Now, the problem that I talked about in a recent video I did on being overqualified is that assumption isn't always true. I understand the basis for it. I understand that, why they do it. But the problem I have is that they just assume it about everyone, whether or not it's true. It is not true for everyone. This is the problem. Okay? Some people have been into management and they don't like it. They don't want to be in management anymore. They want to come back down and be a worker. They felt comfortable there, and that's where they want to stay. But now they're overqualified for being a worker, and this is the problem. So, and you say here, I live in a small town and the same level positions are not currently available. Yeah, they might not be posted. Listen, my God, learn about the hidden job market. If you don't, that's where you need to look, okay? Because you don't know what positions are available because 80% of them are hidden, okay? I did a video about that recently too. Listen, the sooner people tune into this, the sooner you will be happily employed and your career will take off, okay? It's a very tough sell to try and convince people that this exists when they don't see it, and or sometimes when they're they're opposed to the idea. So check out the hidden job market, okay? That's where things like what you're just saying here for sure. Okay, look, here's what you can do. You have a couple of options. You can remove the stuff off your resume that makes you seem overqualified. So if you were a worker and then you went up to be a manager and now you're applying to be a worker again, you could remove the management job off your resume. That is one possibility, okay? If this is a real problem for you and it's not just a one-time thing, this is like, a chronic problem, you can try that. If you do the keyword matching thing, like I described at the beginning of this video when we were talking about resumes, and I mentioned removing things off your resume that have nothing to do with the job requirements, because a lot of times that stuff can be viewed as diluting the stuff you have. Okay? So they were looking for 10 things. Your resume has those 10 things. Great, you look like a fit. But then it has 30 other things that have nothing to do with the job that's posted. They can view that as like, oh, okay, well, you do have these things, but it seems like it's not your main line. It seems like you're more suited to do these other jobs that you talk about so often. So it can dilute what you have. So you could try that and see if that gets you where you want to go, okay? And then in interviews, you have to remember you can't, let it slip like, oh yeah, I was a manager for this once. You have to be consistent, right? So you could try that. And sometimes that works, but sometimes it doesn't, because if you've been a manager for a long time, it's kind of hard to just not mention it. Okay. The other thing you could do is, for God's sake, check out the hidden job market. Tune into that. If you're in a small town, it's even more important. I don't know how small we're talking, but if it's like a town of 10 people, then there's a real limit to what you can do. But if it's like small in the sense that there's like 100,000 people there, definitely there'll be a lot of other things going. There'll be a lot of other people hiring, but they just don't post them, right? They don't need to post them. They don't have any trouble filling those positions. They're highly desirable positions. You can get them. It's just that you go about them in a different way. And I can't get into it here because it takes a very long time to explain. But I have done a lot of videos. Check those out and check out this course. If you really want to get into it, that's where I put everything, okay? It's an entire course worth of material. It talks about how to apply for posted jobs, but it also talks about hidden jobs. Okay, so anyway, if that's of interest to you, check it out. Do your own research. That's where 80% of the jobs are. They're not posted. And a lot of times you don't even have to deal with recruiters, which is an added bonus. You can just deal with hiring managers the entire time. It's great. Okay, but that's what I would say. Number one, you can remove the stuff that makes you overqualified and see if you get away with that. Number two, look in the hidden job market, which is basically jobs you get through networking by reaching out. You don't have to know anybody. You just have to reach out. Okay. And you can discover the jobs. You can put yourself forward for the jobs. And the bonus is that because you're not dealing with recruiters, it's not going through the official HR organization with recruiters where it's posted. None of the rules that apply to recruiters apply here. You can switch careers for a start, right? If you get along with the boss, you can talk shop, you can get the job, right? So those two things are what I would say. Okay, there are 34 people here. I've reached the end of the chat. As always, check out some of the stuff I have. Check out that Get Hired course right there. There's a link to it in the description box under this live stream. Very popular course. A lot of people have taken it. And it basically has all of my recommendations for the entire hiring process. Posted jobs, hidden jobs, everything. Resumes, interviews, all that stuff. So check that out if that's what you're interested in. Also, for people who are wanting to move up, I also have this, Write Like a Professional. It's called Write Like a Professional, but basically it's the communication skills. If you want to get promoted up into management, usually you have the technical skills already. That's not the challenge. You've got to tack on other things. You've got to tack on advanced communication skills, advanced interpersonal skills, stuff like that. I've done a course teaching those, and all of my learning I've put into that. And I've been a CEO of a smaller company and stuff, and I moved up. So that's where I put all that stuff. So if you're interested in that, check that out. Also, a link in the description under this live stream. Okay, it looks like we've reached the end of the chat. Thank you very much. I will be back actually in about 40 minutes. There's another live stream I'm doing this afternoon called Honest HR Nitrous. That's where we talk about the realities of job search, not the theory behind it, not the way it's supposed to work, the way it actually does work. Warts and all. Unprofessional, rude recruiters, everything. Ghosting, AI, everything. So join me for that if you are around. Ask your questions and I'll be happy to help you out. Thanks very much. You guys are awesome. I wish you nothing but the best, and best of luck in your job search. Take care.